What
Hey,
up? Back.
sorry
What's up,
about
bro?
that.
It's all good.
Yes,
Um, Thank you for kicking it with me.
thank you for having me.
No problem. I was playing a little bit of Anita earlier on. Um, I gotta, big up my friends. But I want to do a little walk down memory lane, and we can derivate wherever necessary because I know you're a conversationalist like myself. So,
Yeah.
um, I wanted to start with the Bronx.
Mm,
Um, so born in the Bronx and then to New Jersey.
yes.
Um, here's my question. I know your history. I know born to Jamaican parents. Um, what was that like growing up musically? What did you hear around the house growing up?
Reggae.
Considering reggae.
Reggae, I mean, Bob Marley. My parents brought me and my brother to see Bob Marley in 1977 in Central Park. I was in Central Park today. I actually went walking for 6 miles in Central Park. But uh, my parents brought us to his Bob Marley to see him in Central Park when I was 7. My brother was 4. And then again in 1980. So we were children that went to go see Bob Marley. I mean, to Jamaican families, Bob Marley was God. And so Toots and the Maytals, I mean, all the classic reggae of that time. Um, 5446 was my number. Just spongy reggae, Dennis Brown. I mean, we went to
Wow.
Reggae Sunsplash with my parents in the summertime. But I was also born in the Bronx. And thank you for shouting out where I was born because I also remember the sounds of literally scratches in the middle of the night. Like those parks, Hafen Park was a park nearby where we grew up, but we could actually hear the, DJ, this Cool Hercs and all of them scratching the records like as kids. So I grew up around hip hop, a child of the 70s, the beginning, earlings of hip hop. At home, we heard reggae, but my parents also loved soul music very much. So my father was a soul head. So on Friday nights, my father would buy, like, there's local record stores in the Bronx. Daddy would go to the record store and buy 5, 6 records. So it was disco music, Evelyn Champagne King, the Staple Singers, the Temptations, Motown, Roberta Flack. But my father also loved jazz. So
Okay.
Daddy had recordings by Sarah Vaughan, Sonny Stitt. It was a very eclectic household. My parents are still remain to be music lovers. We were that family, whether we were in the Bronx or New Jersey, that entertained a lot, and people would come over to our house and listen to records. My mother cooked curry goat. My father bought records. So people was always at our house listening to music. So it was inevitable that I would fall in love with music. And then, when we moved to Teaneck, New Jersey from the Bronx, there was free music school systems. Teaneck was an integrated school system, integrated um, was the first town to voluntarily desegregated schools. And Teaneck also had free music lessons. So growing up and hearing all those sounds around me, I gravitated to wanting to get the free music lessons that came into my new town. And it was a big culture shock growing up from a largely Jamaican community in the Northeast Bronx to this integrated town, which was largely Jewish, Black and Jewish. So it was a real culture shock. So having music, studying music as a child to focus on my first instrument was the trumpet, then the piano, and then songwriting gave me something to focus my energy and my homesickness from the Bronx. But people came to visit my parents, and we just have our music lovers to this day.
Wow. So you mentioned picking up musical instruments, trumpet, piano. Um, where did your desire to sing come from? Was it kind of intertwined in learning how to play, or?
Not at all. My singing did not. My really desire to came to sing came way later. That was really a college thing.
Okay.
Um, Really and truly, like I was around singers. Teaneck, New Jersey, for those of you who don't know, is I grew up with Millie Jackson living around the corner. I grew up with Brooke. I delivered the papers to Brooke Shields. Kool and the Gang were neighbors. Ray Barretto, the jazz musician, Rufus Reed, Lenny White, these famous jazz musicians were neighbors of ours. And the Isley Brothers, who I later on wrote a big hit song for, Just Came Here to Chill, a comeback hit for them. While they were signed to Isley Brothers, it was like when I finally got in the studio, I'm like, "Hey, I lived on Phelps Road." He said, "Oh, Phelps Road." He said, "I know exactly what the Isley Brothers lived in Teaneck. Muhammad Ali had a daughter, Mia Ali, who lived in
Mm.
Teaneck. So Teaneck was 15 minutes over the George Washington Bridge, and a town where families moved because it had really good school systems. So growing up, being drawn to the entertainment industry was inevitable because I saw these people literally as neighbors, and I didn't see them as any different than I was. I saw them as people who just had families and may have been entertainers on the weekends, and during the day, Monday through Friday, might have been mowing their lawn or going to the DMV or whatever, you know, just like my parents were. So it filled me with a sense of confidence.
Yeah.
And so that when it became inevitable that I would meet entertainers, I held my head up high. I was like, "Hi, I am such and such and such," you know. But
Yeah.
asking about singing was something I was not confident about because I grew up with these amazing singers. Big Bub, who was in the group today,
Yeah.
was like a childhood friend, and then there was other Regina Bell, Bernard Bell. They're from Inglewood, which was one town over. They're a little older than me, but I knew all of these singers, and I was the pianist that people would come to like, okay, I got to play for a challenge show. What song should I sing? You know, I was like an early, like almost vocal coach and accompaniment person. But once I finally started to write my own songs, I'd have those other singing friends of mine come and do the demos. And my father would always be like, "You're letting these people change your songs. You know, like they're adding too many riffs." And Daddy was like, "You need to learn how to sing your own songs and stay closer to the melody." So I was in bands. You know, I played the trumpet and keyboard. We had like a band called New Progressions, which was like a high school big band. We had horns. We were like a little local Earth, Wind, and Fire. But one time I sang with New Progressions one time in high school. And then this friend of mine, John Hockroth, that I went to Teaneck High with, he just had this dream of taking some of his lyrics and making a demo with it. I'm like, okay, if he wants to do this collaboration, and he wanted me to sing the song. And I was like, no, let me get one of my singing friends to sing it. And I think Big Bub was supposed to come sing it for me, but he couldn't make it. And I'm like, well, and he's like, well, why don't you just sing it? You know, like you showed me how the melody went. And so that was like my first recording session. And it was really in college that when I went to Brown University, shout out to anybody from my university who happens to be on, that I freed up to start singing. And some of my first singers that made me feel like I could hear what my voice could do were jazz singers, like Al Jarreau, Diane Reeves. I remember hearing My Funny Valentine by her arrangement of that, and like literally like I want to do that. And when I went to jazz, I was in the jazz band playing the trumpet, but also the jazz director was like, okay, if you want to sing a couple of standards in the set, go ahead and sing. And then I ended up starting this singing group with a friend of mine in college called Shades of Brown. And we were like a cover band where we would do like Anita Baker, or we would do, you know, Michael Jackson, Quincy Jones, you know, sort of Black History Month kind of showcases. But then we had this one singer who passed away named Linnea Stevens. Like we would always try to find her a song. She didn't like this song. She didn't like this song. She was a difficult one. She said, well, just write me a song. So I wrote her this song called Good to Be Back, because she just, no song we would select for her she liked. And then, of course, you know, it happened was when Nisha was like, well, where's my song? And then Roy was like, well, where's my song? So that I ended up like writing songs to all these voices. And prior to that, writing songs was something I did like as a hobby. But then they were like making me write songs for all these voices. And it was the best train. I mean, I sang, of course, and I was always very comfortable teaching people to sing and teaching harmonies. But being in college was really gave me the freedom to sing whatever kind of music I wanted. Because I got away from all those singers that I grew up with who are all gospel trained. Like I was natural. I didn't have a strong, big belting voice. I developed a strong chest voice, but I had more of an airy, you know, kind of more personal texture to my voice. What's up, Kameron Kelly in the house? Good friend of mine, always been a supporter. Thank you for tuning in. So I remember Cindy Mizell, who's also from the area, from near amazing singer. She toured with Whitney. She toured with Luther for years. She's made solo albums. She came to the house and met with my parents because she was like, you know, Gordon is really making a buzz and he's really serious about this. And she was like, can you sing? And I started to sing, and I started to like show her that I could sing, you know. And she said, can you sing airy or can you sing quieter? And I started to show, she said, that's your money voice right there. And she started to show me that doing backgrounds, when you sing backgrounds, you know, you sing, and you know this from when doing backgrounds, you sing in a quieter, more, well, you have a beautiful falsetto yourself. You sing more in the falsettos or more in the you know, the quieter, moodier tones of your voice. And she showed me that day when she came to my house, I had naturally those tones, and she affirmed me that I didn't have to be competitive with all the other singers that I you know, was trying to sort of emulate a sound just like. And like they were mostly gospel singers. I grew up in an Episcopalian, I mean, Jamaican church is like hymns. It's very Episcopal. So I grew up, Jesus Christ is born today.
Yeah.
Hallelujah. I mean, I was in the choir, but I was an altar boy. So it was really when I veered into college that I sang in the gospel choir, played the piano, and gospel and jazz were my first music I started to sing. And then I started to write more pop and R&B for myself, but more so for other people. But that was what found me last. But that became the first love.
Okay, so you mentioned Brown. That was one of the schools that I was considering strongly when I was coming out of high school, and I did not make that choice. It's literally something that I've thought about off and on. I want to know from your perspective, having gone to Brown, about the Ivy League school education, because I know some people might feel like there's a little bit of a departure, culturally speaking, when you're going into an Ivy League school. But it sounds like, there were things in place to kind of, be a support in a large way while you were there. Tell me about that.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because I got a full scholarship to Princeton. And so and I was the first, in my immediate family to go to college. I was the first person to go to college of my parents who took some college courses, but I was the first one, in the family. And I was the eldest on my mother's side of 17 first cousins, some of whom are watching now. So there was a lot riding on me. So when I got into Princeton full scholarship, my parents called everybody to say I got a full scholarship to Princeton. But when I visited Brown, I felt that that was where I was supposed to go. I didn't connect with Princeton as much. It didn't feel as artsy. It just didn't feel the same. But Brown felt like home. And I've always made decisions on how the Spirit leads me. I've always been that person. Like the Spirit of God will tell you, has always told me what I need to do and what I don't need to do. And so when I visited Brown, it just felt right. And I called my father and said, Daddy, I think I want to go to Brown. I mean, my father was like, what? I said, I just think that that's where I'm supposed to go. I said, I'll work. I had two jobs, and 2 jobs freshman year and sophomore year. But that felt like, because I didn't get a full scholarship to Brown, so it's going to cost my parents much more money. But I just felt it was destiny. And I was the youngest freshman. I was 16 when I got there because I skipped a grade earlier. So it just felt like fate. It was creative. There was music. There was academics. There was, I ended up becoming very involved with the African-American department there, the theater department there, Rights and Reasons. I did some acting. I mean, I graduated on time. In 4 years, I have a degree in American Studies, but I was able to creatively blossom and be myself. And Craig Hallman, who was the president of Atlantic Records, he was a classmate of mine. Lisa Loeb, pop singer, was my classmate. Duncan Sheik, who's written a lot of Broadway shows, pop. I mean, these people were all in classes with me. So it was just this creative buzz. And there's become sort of a little Brown music, little mafia that has happened, out of Brown. I mean, wow. And Rhonda Ross and Tracy Ellis Ross, the Ross Dinah's daughters, went to Brown, and I became like a mentor, to Rhonda. She was a freshman when I was, it just felt like home. And it just felt right.
Wow.
Yep.
So you and I have had our own personal conversations about your time at Essence.
Yes.
I mean, you've spoken very fondly about when you worked there. And I remember you telling me there was a certain point where you were still trying to work there and music just was like, you had to step away. So let's say post Brown, at Essence, let's say, and doing music still, but having that job, what describe the push and pull that it was and what you were doing at the time. I believe you even said there was a chance meeting or interview with Queen Latifah. I would like to hear about that too.
Yes. Oh, my friend Nate said tree jobs. Yeah. So after Brown, I went. I graduated Brown. I was 20 years old. I was very young, and I was looking for jobs, and I ended up applying unsolicitedly to a job at Essence, and ended up landing the job. And first, I was an editorial assistant. I was making no money. My father was furious at me. Like, how could you go to this expensive college and I took out all these loans and now you're gonna like go work? But once again, it was a passion decision. It just felt like where I was supposed to be.
Yeah.
And it was as fate would have it. I mean, I started out as an editorial assistant and I had some writing background in college, but it turned out the entertainment editor was leaving. And while I was there, I had my, I had an interest in the entertainment, field, and Essence was starting to do the Essence Awards and the Essence Music Festival. So I became sort of a go-to person for other editors to get an opinion of what the pulse was. And then it ended up 2 years after I was there, she ended up, the prior entertainment editor ended up leaving to write novels, and that's what she's done ever since. And I was 22, I was young, got promoted into the position of entertainment editor. And at that time, I just, got a chance to write more stories. And I was interviewing Queen Latifah for a story that was published in Essence. And she ended up, it was a round table, she, Heavy D, LO. It was about six people who were in the story. And she ended up coming a little bit late and staying late. And she was like, "Are you a musician?" And I was like, because, this is my job. I'm not supposed to be promoting my music there. I'm like, yeah, I kind of am, because she said, "Yeah, I want to hear your music." Because at that time I was working at Essence, but I knew my dream was to really write songs. I knew that. Mm-hmm. So on the weekends, I was always going to like other producers, up and coming producers in New York's home studios, just working on songs. This is before I met some of the bigger producers that took me under their wing. So that was what I do. But I just happened to have a videotape of some of my songs, and I'm like, "Hey, here's the tape." Literally in the ages of cassette tapes. Gave her a tape, and she heard this song, and she loved it, and she left a message on my not voicemail, on my answering machine. Like back then, we had to like press the button, like the answering machines, the old school. She ended up calling me. I was like, "Oh my God." Queen Latifah called me, because as a child, even as a teenager, I would write my little songs, copyright my songs, send them cold calls, send them to the back of the record companies. I'd see the addresses and just send it in like this. "Hi, I'm Gordon Chambers. This is a song for such. I mean, I was always, everybody who knew me, I was always writing songs and always wanted to like just be in music, whether it was performing or writing or whatever. So finally, like, she called me. And she was like, "I want to work with you. I want to do something with you." And then her brother had just passed at a motorcycle accident. Lancelot Owens, he was as her only brother's name. And she said, "My brother passed. I want to do something to commemorate him." And three of my closest friends in high school, passed away, and tragically, one was murdered, two were murdered, and one had an accident while he was in Naval Academy. So rest in peace, Danielle Morton, Tobias Gardner, and Danny Marty. So it just turned out that what she was relating to, I had a lot of grief, as well. And I was like, "Yes, I'll help you write that song." And so we wrote the song together called Winky's Theme, which was on her first gold. That was the first gold album that I ever worked on. And as entertainment editor, I put her on the cover of Essence. I was responsible for her first cover, the first Mary J. Blige cover of Essence, the first Toni Braxton cover, the first Erykah Badu cover, the first Puffy feature. He ended up being on the cover after that, but the first long Puffy feature. I mean, once I got promoted to entertainment editor, my mission was there to sort of bring the sort of 90s hip hop and R&B stars to the publication. So, but it was also simultaneously where my personal dream of writing songs, came true. And Queen Latifah was a pivotal person, and it happened right then and there literally at an Essence office. And Phyllis Hyman also I met, rest in peace, and she just this week was her birthday, actually. She would have been 71 this week. Yes, so she was also a pivotal early entertainer that became a big, huge support. And I wrote some songs with her that were released posthumously. But the producers, are the people whose names are not as well known. You know, people sort of, they know me as like, oh, Gordon Chambers, he's written for the Divas, they blah, blah, blah. But really and truly, the biggest supporters of my career and people who are still friends of mine, like to this day, are the producers. You know, Dave Hall, who lives in Atlanta, who you should interview. Legend. I mean, live quiet, like he lives a quiet life. He's not out in the public like that, but legend. I mean, produced half of Mary J. Blige's first album, Mariah Carey's Dream Lover. Took me under his wing as an unknown songwriter. The meeting was set up through the Untouchables, and you know, I went in. Cheryl Butler, who used to work with the Untouchables, heard my tape. Was like, okay, I'm gonna set you up with Dave Hall. I'm like, with Dave Hall? Wow. And the first person we were in the studio with was Phyllis Hyman, and you know, it was Dave Hall that ended up taking me under his wing, and I wrote my first big hit song with Dave Hall, and Barry Eastman. Then Phyllis Hyman, after meeting me at the session with Dave Hall, Phyllis Hyman said, I want to bring you to meet with another producer I'm working on, Barry Eastman. I'm like, I know Barry Eastman. He's a legend. And Barry had written Freddie Jackson's You Are My Lady, and it turned out Barry was in the process of working with another artist that became, you know, another well-known song. So those are the people, and Troy Taylor, you know, who I met at that time, who was my neighbor, because in 1995 or 96, actually, while I was still at Essence, bought a condo, and Troy used to live right around the corner. So Troy and I didn't start to work together until a little bit later in the earlier 2000s. But Troy was also my friend, my neighbor. He and Carl Thomas used to live right around the corner from me. I know you interviewed Troy recently on your show. Yeah. So these were the people, like, and they are the ones who are still, you know, there's a very close bond with, who really supported me in the very, 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 very early days. And you know, we love each other. Like, it's interesting. Like, I've written for a lot of female icons, but like some of my closest friends in the business have been the men, the producers that I've, you know, when you write songs with people, especially when you write many, many, many catalogs of songs with producers, you know, you spend a lot of time together. You get to know each other as friends, and you know their families, and they know your families, and you know the kids and the grandmothers and the wives, and you know you're in each other's houses, you know, writing these songs, pitching these songs. So you really become. Sometimes you may write a song for somebody, it may be a big hit, but it kind of be a one-off, or like, I'll see you when I see you, hey, you know, backstage, you know, relationship. But the people you write songs with, that becomes a bond, you know, a very deep bond, you know.
So what was I guess the turning point while you were at Essence musically that caused you to say, I have to step away then?
From Essence?
Yeah.
Well, I was burning the candle at both ends. I mean, by 1995, you know, came around, I was busy. I mean, I had songs on the radio while I was at Essence.
Wow.
And because the songs were on the radio, people were calling my office and my assistant to get me to write more songs to be on the radio. So I was like a brand within a brand, so to speak. And I think that just became problematic for some of my colleagues. You know what I mean? Like, it was like, okay, is Gordon here for Essence or is he here for himself? I'm Jamaican, so I'm like, I can have 2-3 jobs, you know what I mean? But it just became a point where I was really burning the candle at both ends. I mean, I had a recording session, an all-night recording session, and totaled the car, you know, fell asleep driving, you know, while I was at Essence. I mean, I was burning the candle at both ends. I remember at one point, Phyllis called my mother, and she said, we have to take care of Gordon. You know, Gordon is working too hard. And, you know, she called my mother on the phone, was like, you know, we have to help him out because he's just, you know, my dream had come true, but I needed my job. And, you know, insurance and security and, you know, it's just what you know. And then finally, my big boss, Susan Taylor, who's a friend of mine to this day, and I had a conversation in my office, and she was like, Gordon, I could keep you here forever, but if I was to keep you here forever, the world would be denied of all of what God wants you to do. And so once we had that, shout out to my brother, Brian, who just came in. My brother, yes. And my cousins, I'm just seeing some people that I'm just giving some shout outs to. It's just, it touches your heart when you see your family come in. So I was like, we had that conversation, and what she said was absolutely true and absolutely prophetic. So 6 weeks later, my assistant who I had hired, and I trained her to take over, and that was that. And that was 1997. And while I was working at Essence, that was when I signed my first publishing deal with which was with Warner Chappell via Prince. Shout out to Prince. Paisley Park Music was my first publishing deal, and Prince signed every check himself. He had quite a signature. And then when I left Essence, my first publishing deal had ended. And but as I had money. I was okay financially. I was okay. But I was scared. It's like, okay, I've leapt out on faith. Was it faith? Was it faith? Was it foolishness? Like, what is this? And there were just people who came into my life. Like, I remember my friend Lloyd Boston, who's a creative director and art director. He was like, Gordon, you're going to be fine. He, like 3 days later, he said, let's go to Office Max and let's get your home office set up. And he spent all day with me just setting up my little home office. And sure enough, I did a course called the Landmark Forum, which was really powerful and pivotal about like just manifesting your dreams. It's a transformational workshop. I did that. And I ended up bumping into L.A. Reid out of the blue. And he said, what are you doing? And I said, well, I've left Essence. My publishing deal just ended. He said, well, what are you doing? I said, I'm just trying to figure it out. He said, well, call my lawyer tomorrow. And he said, I'm starting a new publishing company called Hitco. And call my assistant. Here's my lawyer's number. Just call him. So I called his assistant. I said, well, this is Gordon. She said, oh, we've been awaiting your call. She said, Mr. Reid would like to know, can you join him for breakfast tomorrow at the Four Seasons? I was like, listen, while I was entertainment editor of Essence, I went to everything. Like, I went to all the fly parties. The Fugees had their party on the boat. The Luther Vandross launches. This was the 90s when they had budgets. So yeah. I was like rolling. So after this, I didn't think, like, once I left that job, I didn't think anybody was still, kind of checking for me. He's like, no. His assistant was like, well, he wants you to meet him for breakfast at the Four Seasons tomorrow. So I'm like, okay, here we go. And I sat with him and he said, I'm starting a new publishing company called Hitco, and I want you to be the first writer to join us. And I was like, wow. So I called my lawyer, and my lawyer called his lawyer, and we tied it. And she said, yes, blah, blah, blah. And my lawyer, he said, well, Gordon, this is a very strange situation. I said, what is it, Larry? He said, LA's lawyer said, give Gordon whatever he wants and whatever he needs. And I was like, he said, this is about to be the easiest deal I've ever done in a lawyer in years. I said, okay. And I never understood really what that was about. And I asked LA years later. And so I signed, once I left, the Hitco family became a family. I started spending a lot of time in Atlanta at the Hitco offices, writing with a lot of producers down there in your city where you live. And it just it was the right new home. It was something new to be a part of at a perfect time, and LA depended on me. Like, we had to do interviews about the company. He would say, like, Gordon can do the interview. When he was considering people, CEOs, to run it, he was interviewing a couple of people. He said, who do you think? Tell me what you think. I'm like, why is this man asking me? But he depended on me. And I remember when we had a Christmas dinner when all the writers came, and he said, I would like Gordon to, wow, this makes me very emotional. He said, I would like Gordon to lead our prayer. And I remember leading the prayer. And by this time, he had signed Shakespeare, and he had signed, who wrote, for Usher,
Songwriter. JQ, Sean Garrett.
Yes, all of them. Yes, all Sean Garrett. They had all been signed to Hitco at this time. He said, Gordon James, will you say the prayer for us? And I remember asking him, and I said the prayer, and I said, LA, why did you ask me to do that? He said, Gordon, he said, because all of these people respect you. He said, because of the respect that all of these people have for you. And he said, Gordon, and I said, well, LA, sorry, y'all. He said, I said, why me? Why was I the first? He said, Gordon, if I knew that if I signed you, that they would all come. He said, because of the respect that they all have for you. And, I had such a respect for L.A. Reid, such a respect to this day. So that moment is just a pivotal moment I'll never ever forget. You know, when one of the great, one of your icons, I mean, L.A. Reid and Babyface, you know,
Yeah.
tells you that he thinks that of you, you know, and that you know, I helped him build, you know, build the brand of Hitco Music Publishing. I never knew, you know, and I'm getting emotional because Shakir Stewart was an intern at Hitco, and if for those of you who don't know, Shakir Stewart was our friend who passed away, committed suicide. And you know, he started there as an intern, and I just remember riding around and hanging out with Shakir and having these long talks about life. And then, you know, years later, when he took his life, just had no idea. And LA, he became like a son to LA. You know what was going on, you know what might have been going on there. And of course, when that happens, and it happened to me with Phyllis, of course, and with Shakir, you just never know. And sometimes you look back and you just say, what could I have done? Could I have been a better friend? You know, you know, you just never know. You know, of course, it's God's will, and if somebody's in that much pain that they want to transcend, then you just you know, you connect with them spiritually. But it just thinking about L.A. Reid and those you know, in that particular dinner, I just could see Shakir's face very vividly. I don't know if you ever met Shakir.
Yo, yeah.
So his spirit, you know, came back to me. So yeah. So that was my essence to the Hitco transition. That was in 1997, and then LA then left left Arista. I mean, left LA, left LaFace. He sold LaFace to Arista. He left Atlanta and then took the job at Arista. Wait a minute.
Yeah.
No, he took the job at Def Jam first. Did the deal with sold LaFace to Arista, right? Yeah, I think I'm getting the history right. Then he took the job at no. Did he go to Arista? No, he went to Arista first.
Yeah.
He went to Arista first. So he was now at Arista, and then the people at Hitco, Billy Calloway, who stays in touch with me, we just texted each other, who Shakir had hired, reached out to L.A. Reid and some of L.A. Reid's A&R team, and finally made my biggest dream come true of my entire life, was pitch some of my songs to Whitney Houston, and the songs were finally accepted. Because I tried to pitch songs to the Clive Davis team, and the songs I didn't get them through. But finally, in the L.A. Reid, because I had already been, you know, had to develop this relationship with him and his team. Finally, you know, that dream came true. And then at that time, I was hired to produce, you know, not just to write, but to be the producer of Aretha Franklin and Whitney Houston. And then when he left, and when L.A. Reid left Arista and went to Def Jam, I also, you know, Troy Taylor and I started to work together a lot, and then I ended up producing Patti LaBelle and my childhood neighbors, the Isley Brothers. So that period of my life was the trajectory from not just songwriter to producer, to really being the man behind the booth, really calling the shots, turning the record in, you know, approving the mixes, working with the executives, not just the writer, not just the arranger, but responsible for the whole kit and caboodle. And
wow.
And also, you know, and at that time, you know, I you know, in the early 2000s was when I first started to get this little singing bug, you know, again. You know, I had a couple of record deal offers. You know, Andre Harrell had offered me a record deal, and I didn't take the deal. You know, there was rumors that he was going to be leaving the company. So I ended up getting the contract, and I didn't sign the contract. There was a lot of rumors that he was going to be leaving, and he didn't stay. And I didn't want to get stuck in a system without, you know, his assurance that I'd work with him. Mm-hmm. So I kind of just put that dream on the back burner. But, you know, when I was producing Whitney, she's like, I think you want to do what I do, baby. And if that's what you need to do, then that's what you need to do. She said it just like that when I was singing her this high note. And so finally she put that bug in my ear. And that's when people were first starting to do independent records. Kim had done his independent record, which he later got signed to Motown. But you know, Nora Jones was like in New York making a buzz as an independent artist. John Stevens, who became, of course, John Legend. People started to release independent records. So I was like, okay, this is the early 2000s. Maybe I can learn and give this thing a try, you know? And Troy Taylor, shout out to Troy Taylor, was like, somebody's like, okay, Gordon, if this is what you want to do, you know, bring the songs to my basement. And we put that first independent record together, introducing Gordon Chambers. That was 2004. And also, big shout out to Shakira Stewart, rest in peace. Because finally, when I was ready to do some of the solo recording, I wanted to record a portion of it with a live band. I wanted to get that live band sound.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a studio called RPM, which is closed now, but that was where Lauryn Hill had made her first album. That's where Cassandra Wilson had made Blue Light Till Dawn. Some of my favorite albums there was this organic, rich presence and sound that studio had. It was a one-client studio. Like you could only, it was like they only had one client at a time. So people made albums there. And that was the record. That was where I wanted to make my first record. You know, and I wanted that kind of intimacy, and I wanted to get the band. I knew all the musicians. I knew the best musicians in New York. I want to get a band like the Funk Brothers and go and just make an album, you know. And so finally Shakira, but that's very expensive. That's much more expensive to do with tracks. You know, it's a much more complicated process. And one of Nora Jones's producers, Brian Backus, helped me produce that side of what the first album became, because it was like ended up having half tracks with Troy. Troy helped me lock in the R&B side of it. And then the more organic acoustic side was a little bit more pop, slightly jazz. But together, the combination really worked. But it was Shakira. When I told Shakira what I wanted to do, Shakira was like, okay, Gordon, let me talk to the publishing company. And he said, I'll get back to you. And Shakira, who had been an intern, who then became like Mr. Not Returning Everybody's Calls, Mr. Fabulous, and rose the ranks to running the company, finally was like, okay, Gordon, what do you want to do? I said, I want to record at this place, RPM. He said, okay, how much is that going to cost? I said, well, you know, I got to do my research. There's a producer I want to work with. He said, okay, I'm going to talk to the publishing company. And he said, call me back tomorrow. And they said, and they approved, they approved $20,000 for me to go in and cut with the live band. And at this time, Shakira, was really more, spending a lot more time with some of the more, you know, urban writers, like we mentioned Shakespeare and Pooh Bear.
And
yes, you know, those are people that he signed. Like LA signed me in the early days, but then he, you know, once he rose to power, he starts, and he was spending a lot more time with the people that he signed. You know, so this was the time when I was like, and I remember Shakira and I remember sitting in his office and said, "Wow, you worked that out?" He said, "Yeah." And I said to him, I said, "Why?" He said, "Because you're Gordon Chambers, and if this is what you want to do, then you deserve the opportunity to do it the way you want to do it."
Mm-hmm.
I'll never forget he said that. And so we went and we made that first solo recording, introducing Gordon Chambers, and it was a labor of love. A lot of my friends, you know, I would just, you know, my people, they were my friends. I just called them, "Hey, I'm doing a record. Want to come down, lay a vocal?" You know, I called Mike Phillips. You know, he came and played the sax on one song. Rest in peace, Roy Hargrove played trumpet on a song for me. Carl sang a song for me. It's kind of a duet with me. I mean, I was just making a record with people that I knew and loved. Troy, Prince Charles Alexander, mixed the first album for me. You know, it was just a labor of love. It went way over budget. I had to put a second mortgage on my house. My father, once I didn't even tell my father about that. I was like, this man is really going to kill me. But I wanted to do it right. I wanted to, it was very important to me. I said, since I was doing this independently, I wanted to make a record that I felt was polished enough and timeless enough that it could get picked up by a major label if they wanted it. Mm-hmm. But also just stand on its own and be a quality piece of work. I knew that I was coming from a hit maker of the mainstream. So if I'm going to make my first record, I want to make a record that I felt was qualitatively competitive. If not competitive, I wasn't in a competition, but that made its mark. And that was very important to me, from the artwork and everything. And then I wanted to make a record that if it was polished enough, then I remember L.A. Reid got, he left Arista and then got signed to Def Jam. So I remember playing the record for L.A. Reid, you know, going to his house, he invited me to play, and he said, Gordon, and he said to me, he said, why didn't you bring this to me at Arista? I said, because it wasn't done yet, but it is done now. And he was like, wow, but I can't work on this right now because they brought me to Def Jam to work on the hip hop. You know, it's Def Jam.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, and he loved the record. I was like, but why not? Can't we? And he was like, I can't. And that was a hard pill to swallow, you know, but I think we've always had an honest relationship. I think he was telling me the honest truth. So I pitched the record to other major labels and I didn't get it picked up. And I was brokenhearted. I really thought I did it right. The fans loved it. And then I was like, okay, it was a really difficult time. It was really something that I had to learn how to be an independent artist. And my friend Cola, very close friend, like a sister to me, who had been somebody who had like booked a lot of artists. She said, "Well, she said, I understand, baby." She said, "I understand you've been at the grind of the major labels, but now," she said, "you got to get on the grind of the Underground Railroad." And she explained it to me, and then I got on the grind of the quote unquote Underground Railroad, and you know, started learning how to be an independent artist and what rooms to play, what promoters to meet, you know. And then I found that there was this other amazing community of people, of tastemakers, of radio people of all around the world, artists like yourself, Nolan Baines, promoter, tastemaker, who's introduced both of us many years ago, who were really champions of independent soul music. I had no idea. I knew Eric Roberson. He was a friend because he'd also come, who I know you just interviewed 2 days ago. He was also in the songwriting world. You know, had written songs for Music Soul Child and a number of you know, we had similar backgrounds, but I knew he was doing his thing independently. So Eric just became a friend. He was like, okay, Gordon, like, you know, first of all, you got to do this. There's no turning back. You've done it, and whatever you need, I got you. So once I learned this new world and that there was this huge, beautiful community, and it was international, that I was like, wow, okay. So I ended up putting a band together, you know, and sometimes pick up bands in different cities, and started doing interviews with all these beautiful tastemakers all around the world, satellite radio. Cayman Kelly, who's on now, was a very big supporter. Shout out and grateful to his support. And started, you know, getting opportunities to perform, sometimes as a headliner in smaller clubs and sometimes opening for others. You and I opened up for, was it Frankie Beverly and the Maze, right? Yeah, it was Frankie, Tamia.
Tamia too.
And Frankie Beverly and Maze, yep. So started, you know, getting opportunities to ended up opening and sharing the stage festivals with some of the same, you know, artists that I had admired, some of the same artists that I had written for. So it just it took a while to earn a level of respect as an artist, but you know, by the time I released the second album, which Ledisi also sang a duet with me on, Call to Love Again, was released, I started to really build up my name as an artist as well. And then I ended up being on the cover of Billboard as an artist, you know. Wow. And so that was kind of like that, when I turned that corner in the early, and people showed up. It's like, Troy, first of all, thank you to Troy for letting me come in your basement, play you all those songs, spending so much time with me to help me put that album together. And here I am, you know, 50 years old, four albums later, and hanging with you.
Wow. Okay, so.
And talking too much. Am I talking too much? Tell me to shut up.
No, yeah, I would never tell you to shut up, Gordon.
Okay.
But I am gonna get to this, right? Okay, so you've influenced so many artists, songwriters, producers, and just music consumers with what you have given to the music industry, both as an artist and as a songwriter. I'm not sure if everybody who's watching right now really knows, the extent that you have kind of been the soundtrack, helped to provide the soundtrack for a lot of people's lives and loves. So I'm gonna put you on the spot because I can go down the list. All right, Anita Baker, she's right behind you. All right, everybody, Anita Baker. Okay, but there are a lot of others. I mean, Whitney, somebody just said, but can you take us down memory lane a little bit with what you've done, please?
Yes, I will.
Okay.
So I'm gonna go upstairs.
Oh, that's right. You got the piano upstairs. Let's go.
We're going upstairs. Hold up, y'all. This is my house, by the way. It's called Love Song.
Yes.
That is the name of my house. It's in Brooklyn. Shout out to Brooklyn. If Brooklyn is in the house. Brooklyn be in any house. Like, I've been all over the world. I'm like, is Brooklyn in the house? And people are like, in the smallest of time, they're like, yes. Brooklyn be in every house. So thank you, Brooklyn, for keeping me safe during the quarantine. And here I am, and I'll go back down memory lane with you guys. Didn't bring my diamonds. You don't have to put a dress on. 'Cause I just came here to chill. There'll be no other VIPs. The party's Kameron Corvet and me. And I just came here to chill. I wrote this for the Isaac Brothers, y'all. I just came here to chill. When the road gets rough, we say the things we should not say. But I never meant to change my color that way. I apologize. Take over. Oh, believe me, I do. I apologize. Honest and true. 'Cause I knew I was wrong. So I'm singing my first Grammy-winning song at my house called Love Song. Simply trying to get through, just to make it on up to you. My sunshine has come. Thank you, Angie Stone. I'm all cried out. There's no more rain in this class. It was hot today. My sunshine has come. Oh, I'm all cried out. There's no more rain in this cloud. For Phyllis and Whitney, Cheryl Levert and Shakir, my friends in the industry, my family members we've lost. This is going to special. This one's from the heart. Who would have known that you have to go so suddenly, so fast? How could it be the sweet memories would be all that we have left? And now that you're gone, every day I go on, but life is not the same. Hey, Troy. I'm so empty inside, my tears I can't hide. Though I smile with every tear I cry. So this one was recorded by Brandy, Tamia, Gladys Knight, and Shaka Khan, Shaka Khan. Though I'm missing you, I'll find a way to get through. Living without you, 'cause you were my sister, my strength, and my pride. Only God may know why. Still I will get by. Yolanda Adams. Even when it rains outside, there is light. And even when you cry all night, you're alright. Even when you lose your way, you get through. There is someone watching over you. Tokasani, this one's for you, baby. There is someone watching over started out with this one. This is the first one I ever heard on the radio. It was sampled and remade by a young rapper who I've yet to meet. Thank you, Tory Lanez. And that happened at a time when this very house called Love song had burned down to the ground. Major fire, but God is so good that he restored it. And while he was restoring it, this song hit the radio airwaves once again. And it goes like this. And y'all can sing along. I don't wanna rain on this parade, but I'm starting to question the love that was made. I'm not looking for just an affair. I deserve a love that is based on the truth, not just dare. You will not hurt my pride if right now you decide that you aren't ready to settle down. But if you want my heart, then it's time that you start acting like you're mine in the light and the dark. If you love me, Instagram. If you trust me, do it. If you want me, show it. And you need me, prove it. If you love me, say it. If you trust me, do it. If you want me, show it. And you need me, prove it. And this one was not as big a hit, but this one is there's songs that hit the charts, and there's a song that touched the hearts. So you asked me about the time that I left Essence. This is a song that I wrote the same day that I had that conversation with Susan Taylor. This was on my most recent album. I cover something on that I've written on every album. So this one is on Surrender. This is a song I've been singing a lot during the pandemic, during the awakening, during Black Lives Matter, a time when we're seeing people of all races, all colors, all ages stand up in one voice. So this was the last one that I wrote. This was on Brandy's album, Never Say Never, and my new album, Surrender. Because there is one sky above, there is just one soul, so sweet and love. And if I've got one chance, one choice, let me sing it with my heart, one song, one voice. Because there is one sky above, there's just one sky above, one soul, so sweet love. And if I've got one chance, one choice, I'm gonna sing it with my whole heart, with one song, one more, one more.
Hey, I had to get my jam on. Man, thank you for being back with us for a second part. I wanted to ask you a songwriter's question. I think you and I have had that conversation too. Well, at least about this that I'm about to ask you, but for those who are just joining in, what type of changes occur in a songwriter's life when a song does go to #1 or top 10 or really explodes on the radio? Give us some insight for those who are aspiring, kind of those type of changes.
Wow. Okay. I mean, I think that's different for everybody.
Okay.
That's different for every song. But many writers that I've spoken to have explained that you pay your dues for your first hit, Before that first hit comes, there are probably tens or hundreds that you may have thought were just as good or better. You have to be willing to go through the journey. Sometimes the rejection on the way to the comeuppance is brutal. And a lot of people don't talk about those parts of the story. They don't talk about sometimes, there's unfair things that happen. between songwriters and songwriters splits, and sometimes it can be a very manipulative business, and it can be an exploitative business. As writers, I try to, spend time with writers, educating writers about, the power of publishing and how to make a split sheet, and what, literally, if you write, how, what portion of a song is quote unquote worth how to negotiate and navigate those conversations. Mm-hmm. Because there are a lot of people that I know who've had, written hit songs and never gotten any credit for them, much less any money. And then there's the conversations that I have with people, that if you should have your first hit, quote unquote, or your first moment in the sun, or your first comeuppance, and this is very important. This is probably even more important. Is then the real work begins. Is who are you? Because people may start to attach themselves with what you've done and not care about who you are. You could find yourself with money and spend it on all kinds of foolishness, and people who care do not mean you well. You could end up just having this entourage that will spend out and eat out all that you worked so hard for. So then really a mentorship, that's where mentors are powerful. Yeah. That can show you and groom you. Now that there's a song that I love by the Third World, by the reggae band Third World. Now that we found love, what are we going to do with it? But now that you've found whatever success means to you, how are you going to keep it? How are you going to, and who's going to be down with you so that you can maintain it? I'm very grateful to come from a grounded and successful family, mm-hmm. That always have wanted the best for me. They wrote biggest supporters, critics when need be. Not yes people, but supporters. And so just when things start to happen for me, gave me good advice so that I would have something to show for it. So that I could show it, do it, and and continue to quote unquote prove it. Because every hit can go up the charts and then it goes down. We've seen the movies, we've seen the 5 Heartbeats, we've seen the any movie that they have a BET movie about, careers do this. So, it's about, if God should bless you with that, what are you going to do with it? What are you going to do to edify yourself, to ground yourself? Who's going to be around you that doesn't envy you for it, but that's going to be like, okay, I want you to have this and keep this, And now what do you want to do? And now that this step has happened, what's next for you? And how can I support what it is that this open door can now lead you to? Mentorship is so powerful and so pivotal and so important and so needed in our community, because success can be a lonely and fleeting thing. Yeah. So that's that. I don't know if that's the answer you were looking for, but that's the real. Yeah. That's what came to my spirit to say, in a very real way.
That's exactly what I needed. You mentioned earlier, right? There's a terminology, the divas and all of that. I've never really, I don't know how to feel about that per se. And this question isn't about the terminology itself, but more so about the vast array of strong female voices, and I'm assuming in most cases personalities. Yeah. That you've dealt with. I mean, you've written Patti LaBelle, Shaka Khan, Anita Baker, Beyonce, Brandy, Tamia, Deborah Cox, like the list goes on and on. Is there a secret? Is there a secret to writing with and for those types of voices and personalities?
It's really interesting. I don't know how it happened that way. It just, it wasn't premeditated. Mm-hmm. I mean, I grew up listening to some of those same voices that I ended up writing songs for, thank the Lord. But there's male singers that I loved just as much. I grew up loving Teddy Pendergrass and Luther Vandross, I pitched a lot of songs to a lot of male, hit makers, and a lot of a lot of the men in the business in R&B are singer-songwriters, so a lot of them wrote their own songs. So it wasn't, some reason, just it didn't connect, the dots didn't connect, for me to have that kind of same, it wasn't premeditated. I was like, I want to be the songwriter to the divas. It just was never that way. It was more like we were writing songs with my friends, men, male producers. We started writing songs. We heard that this person was looking for a song. We pitched it, and we knock on wood, it ended up having that. And then sometimes like when the word got out, oh, he wrote for this one, then like I want, the word, singers have healthy competition with other singers. Like once, I had a hit record, like Whitney had a warmth to me because she loved I Apologize. She used to sing it to me every time I was in her presence. She would sing me it, like her rendition of it. So singers are friends with other singers, and they read other credits. And so once you get in the door, and I had something that came through, it did help, help to make other things happen. But it was never premeditated. I've always just tried to write sensitive, timeless lyrics, stories, things that were poetic and heartfelt. I love literature. I love Toni Morrison, and I love James Baldwin, and I love I'm a reader. Like I'm always reading a million magazines and books. Ta-Nehisi Coates I love. So I love deeply the written word. I mean, I come from a magazine editorial background. So I always wanted to just write songs that I thought had literary quality, if so to speak. And it maybe at the time when I was pitching those songs, they just ended up connecting with some of the voices that they got to. I'm grateful, I'm grateful to be known for something. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, for me personally, it's always been, I have not had as much, it's been harder for me to write records that would be received in a certain type of way, let's say, by a female artist. I mean, it's always been a goal of mine. And I think the sensitivity portion that you mentioned really hit home with me, and the honesty and everything like that. Sometimes, at least sometimes when I've written for males, it's always been about achieving a certain level of feeling behind this or behind that. And sometimes the message can get lost, in the bravado sometimes, but that's super dope. So there's no key that you've had like in the studio, like Diva Whisper, like, oh God, I'm about to go in the studio with this person. How do I?
I mean, lyrically, like I can imitate voices. So when I laid the demo of I Apologize, I'm in a parade, I did sing kind of in that. But when I sang the Ron Isley demos that we were pitching to him, I sang in his tone. I mean, I can imitate a voice. And so sometimes writing, like I would try to just do an inflection of a voice, whether male or female, to just try to like affect that tonality, when I pitch the song. So, and so that's to a degree take in perspective their personality. Because like you said, some of these people do have, some of these artists do have big personalities. So I try to, like, if I had a sense of that personality, try to incorporate something signature in the song that they might hear themselves, in. And
Wow.
Yeah.
Shout out to Cy Smith. I saw her,
my sister,
joining in. You mentioned earlier about Phyllis Hyman. I saw that you've credited her with being one of your mentors, and I saw you mention Gerald Levert as well. Can you describe what knowledge you gleaned from those relationships?
Brotherhood and sisterhood. I mean, in a really real way. I mean, those are phone numbers that I still have in my phone. Like, you know, I think when somebody passes, one of the greatest honors you can give to them is you just don't erase their phone number from your phone. You know, Phyllis she passed way earlier, so I have her business card, Command Performances. But both of them, you know, I met Phyllis really early before I had any hit records out for anybody. But, you know, when I was moonlighting at Essence, Phyllis just took a great interest in me as a person, you know, not just as a writer. Obviously, she wanted me to, you know, help, you know, co-writing some of these songs that were wanting to in Destiny be some of her last thoughts. But she took great interest in me as a person, in my family, in my well-being, concerned for me. I mean, at one point when the phone was ringing at Essence, and I was writing songs and she was like, she said, listen, that shit's gonna get you in trouble at the job. She said, have those music calls call me. I'll answer the phone, Command Performances, Chamber Music. And she said, I answer my own phone calls. She said, she said, I imitate my voice. I can change my voice up and say, Command Performances, Chamber Music, and take calls for you. She said, because you don't want to bring, you know, you might get yourself in, you know, in a little, you know, political hot water. So she was just helpful and kind, you know. I did not know she was depressed like that. I really didn't know. And I found out after she was passed away that she didn't want me to know. You know, Roberta Flack, I remember Roberta, you know, I tried to get into the funeral. It was like a public memorial, and like, it was, you know, like all these people trying to get in. And finally, like, Roberta saw, and the security didn't want to let, it was overrun. And Roberta saw me, she said, let him in. And she grabbed my hand and she let me, and I ended up sitting real squeezed right next to Roberta Flack. And I was just devastated. And she said she protected you. She didn't, you know, she said you know, she said she was trying to protect you. And Gerald Levert was a great friend of Troy Taylor's as well. Gerald and Troy and I worked together on several songs. And Gerald ended up becoming an early mentor to Trey Songz. Gerald Levert was cool as heaven. I won't say hell. I mean, that brother was cool. He would be like, "Here's my number. Give me a couple." I remember I called him one day. He gave me, you know, his address. I sent him some songs and I sent them to him, and he played them at the barbershop. Yo. To that record, singing that song. And he said, the barber done cut my face. He said, turn that up. And I'm sitting here with a cut face. When we gonna record that song? I mean, Gerald was real, warm. And by the time Troy and I worked with Gerald, I had first done my first solo album. And I got invited to Cleveland to perform and do a promo thing. And I think it was like at a bookstore. And I was doing something else. You know, I was on the underground circuit. It wasn't like anything that I thought would have been on his, it wasn't a gig that he would have done or on his radar. Well, he found out that I was there. Wow. And I think I was in Detroit, and then I ended up like staying an extra day to do a smaller type thing. Well, he found that I was there and called me, "What are you doing in my city?" And I said, "Oh, well, I just this pickup thing. I don't care. Cleveland is my town, and anybody who comes to Cleveland has to go through me." And he said, "Well, I'm not there. How long you stay?" I said, "I have to fly back. Well, you need to stay another day." I said, "I can't. And I have to go back." He said, "Well, I'm mad at you." He said, "Because there's a tradition that my mother, Martha Levert, cooks for all the entertainers who come into town, whether I'm there or not." He said, "So I'm just really mad you didn't give me that opportunity to honor you, you know, with all the entertainers." So just Gerald and Phyllis were family, you know. Yeah. They just had a beautiful, I think Phyllis had a love of family. She wasn't as close with her family. So when I would talk about family, it resonated with her. You know, Phyllis called my mother many times, and, you know, to just, you know, but really, you know, it was Whitney was just, when I talk about family, You know, her spirit, you know, was just, you know, really big. And Si's on here who's toured with her. I mean, Whitney's this big personality, beautiful, gorgeous woman, stunning, but warm, like really real, like sits you down and wants to talk to you and wants to talk to you about you. And, you know, she wanted to call my parents to say hello. And she told me to get out of the room. She said, get out of the room so I can talk to these people. She made me go out of the room so she could just have a conversation. But just, you know, just really warm, really real, loved music fanatic. So we would just be music heads, you know, talk about, you know, artists that we just both grew up loving and admiring. And, you know, I talked to Whitney about all kinds of music that I didn't even think she knew. I was like, well, I love Evan. She said, I love Betty Carter. She said, I love Betty. I mean, she knew Dakota State. I mean, she knew all this music. She knew all of this jazz that I just was shocked. I didn't know the depth of the music that she knew. She said, but, you know, she said, my grandmother, you know, taught me to play the piano. My grandmother introduced me to, you know, all this music. She, you know, she talked about, you know, lessons that, of course, that her mother taught her. She talked about gospel, Tremaine Hawkins. She told me that, you know, it was her mother taking to her a Tremaine Hawkins concert that really was pivotal when she's like, when she's told her mother, like, I think that I want to really go pro. Like, after she said she saw Tremaine hit this note and bend her back way back like that. Because I talked to Whitney and I would talk about music and family. Like, there was a family sense. And we had a family dinner with her family at my house. After she passed, you know, the family was in town and I had them to dinner, her mom and her brother and sister-in-law. We had a beautiful family dinner. Whenever I was in town, I would, you know, often see the family. Sometimes I wouldn't always see her, but I would see you know, if she was in town, I would see her. She always made space for me. The family just made space for me. And just, you know, and one of the things that really choked me up is I remember Whitney and Bobby saying to me, you know, Gordon, they said, you know, can we send Bobby Chris up to spend the summer with you and you can just show her music, you know, you can teach her, you know, things. That really meant, of many of the things of the conversations that we shared, that was probably the one that stayed with me the deepest. But, you know, it's amazing. I mean, you know, I'm 50 years old. I'm just turned 50 this year. So I feel very young, but in my time and in my journey, I've lost some great people, you know, and you know, I just keep their, you know, their spirits and their memories alive in conversations like this.
Yeah. That's what we need. You know, people are able to hear about what great people they were through these types of conversations. So, and I appreciate you for sharing, because you know I don't have, you know, that type of experience to be able to draw from, but listening to it, it means more coming from you. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
I was gonna ask you. Let's talk about the record business real quick.
sure.
You have seen so much. You've been around the business. You've been around the infrastructure of businesses building.
Yes.
So what's up with Gordon Chambers, the record exec? Have you ever thought about that? Like, what do you think about that?
You know, Andre Harrell wanted that for me. And he was courting me to go to Motown and do A&R. And then there was a big rumor that he was going to be let go.
Okay.
And so I did not end up going. At that time, I was at the Essence family doing that work, very proud of that work that I was doing. But that's one of my greatest, I don't know if it's a regret, but, you know, one of my, like, what ifs, you know what I mean? You know, he was the person that kind of was like, okay, I want you here and I want you here and this is why I want you and I need you here. He was the one who was the most serious about it, and convicted about it, and had a vision for. I mean, Andre Harrell was a visionary. I remember that when he said, "Yo, you need to bring that essence over here. I need that essence, classy shit. You need to bring that away about." He said, I got my hip hop." He said, "I got my hip hop. But I need you to come and bring that over here." I remember very vividly him sharing exactly why, you know. So that is one of those what ifs. And who knows? Who knows what God has in store? I'm down for it. I mean,
Okay.
You just never really know. I mean, I think that very similarly to Andre, and the day he passed, that was earlier this year, right in, during the COVID era. I mean, I was just devastated. I hadn't seen him in a couple of years, but I could not believe that beautiful man who loved so many people and was so greatly loved. I stayed in the bed all day long, because I just couldn't believe it. Because I mean, this whole era, the era in which I've had my fame or notoriety or whatever you want to call it. I mean, he was the king of that era, the king. I mean, all that's jiggy and fly and black excellence and black elegance and black jigginess and black flyness. He was the godfather of it all. I mean, just going to Uptown Records, which I went to many times, both as a songwriter and as a journalist, because in my Essence days, I interfaced with them. I did the first Mary J. Blige, edited the first Mary J. Blige cover of Essence, and then I also wrote the bio of the My Life album. So I spent a lot of time at the Uptown offices. And first of all, his team, the executives there, amazing, brilliant people. So I think that Andre, that's a what if. But also, I think that I have followed Andre's legacy in sort of many other ways as a mentor. Andre was a friend to many and was a mentor to many. I mean, Puff Diddy kept him close to him like this today. I mean, I have my friends who are watching this. Steph Reed is on here. What up, Steph? Who are watching this right now. I'm seeing the names pop up that know me. And I advise them. I empower their dreams. I'm down for them personally, professionally. And I think that I may not have an executive with a title, but I think I'm a godfather in my own kind of way. So,
for sure. I mean, and that's the reason why I was asking, because I feel like there should be more, more people like you with the substance. I think there will be a little bit more care, a lot more care taken into the fact that people are giving their lives to something that most of them don't really know anything about, and there are enough wolves in this business. And I've always felt like you've always been someone who, no matter where you are in the journey, when you link up with Gordon's going to make sure you're good. He's going to ask how you are doing, and he's not going to just let it go if you say, I'm good, He's going to dive in a little bit. He's going to ask a couple questions. You'll pray for somebody. I mean, South Africa, I mean, I had my, for those of you who don't know, South Africa had its way with me. And the night that it had its way with me, we were out together. We were at the Mojave Club. We had a great night. And the next day, I was still just messed up. And you were on my neck, like, bro, are you, I don't think you're good. I think, and I was trying to fight it off, but it ended up being a situation where I needed some extra time and attention and care. And you were like at the forefront of that. So I feel like that type of caring and nurturing for artists needs to be there, and I know that you've got, your students and everything like that. There's just, I believe personally that I want to see Gordon Chambers there. So I'm using all my prophecy abilities right now.
I'm putting
putting it out there.
And I do receive, and you know, it's interesting because I think that, like, you know, at the time I was worried that that purity and that love of music and love of people, like I might have been tried to like be turned into something that I didn't want to be. You know what I mean? So I think that, like, you know, you just listen. I'm open to whatever God has in store. And listen, I love music. I love music. I love musicians. I love art. You know, I love the self-expression of it. And I do, you know, I do a lot of mentoring. I do a lot of vocal coaching. I do a lot of education. But I mean, anything that any opportunity God brings my way to foster and promote, you know, the pursuit of excellence in people and music, I'm down for.
Yeah.
You know, I am down for that. You know, and yeah, and in any however it, you know, however it looks, however it comes, whether I'm writing the song, producing the song, singing my own song, singing a cover song, coaching the song, coaching somebody else on their song, you know, whatever it is, I'm down for whatever. I'm open and I'm down. Yeah, really,
Yeah.
true. Yes.
That's what's up. I don't know if you saw the question. Are you still teaching at LIU?
No, you know, I did it one semester, but you know, they're sort of building their music program. Like I was like an adjunct professor, like a kind of guest professor for one semester, but they're still in the process of building up the department. And
Okay.
and then they, you know, with the COVID and everything, it's been kind of complicated. But and I've also done some guest things at Berkeley as well. So yeah.
Oh yeah, I could totally see you. Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. I was like, I could see Gordon at
Yeah,
Berkeley
I've been up
easily.
there as a guest many times and loved dearly that experience. Yeah.
What's some enduring advice that you could give to aspiring artists and or songwriters? Because I think it's rare for someone who has had as much success as you've had to still be able to talk about the matriculation process through college and being able to work. I think that's an element that a lot of songwriters and artists don't necessarily have to pull from when it comes to experiences and lessons. But what piece of advice for those who you know, don't necessarily get vocal coached by you or haven't necessarily been around you, what advice would you give to a songwriter or an artist who's aspiring right now?
To listen and study music that comes before you. I mean, I am a big proponent on who's in you. You know, like, who do I hear? Not that you're copycatting, but who do I hear? I think anybody is great. We can hear the greatness that they studied in them. And I think that a lot of today's talents want to be you know, they want to make their mark for today and be current and be fly and all of that. You know, there's a lot of, you know, you get a lot of likes that way. You know, sometimes the more controversial it is the more, you know, you know, a lot of artists pay attention to their media savviness and are willing to do all kinds of things that they may later regret in that pursuit. So I am an advocate of timelessness, of quality, and music that helps me tell your story. I want to play your music and feel like I have gotten a sense of who you are as a person. You know, I think the artists that we most revere or most lean on or most, you know, that we, you know, turn to and big up are the artists that made us feel like we got a sense. Like I was listening to this Essence has a podcast, and they interviewed Patti LaBelle. They interviewed, like, and they were talking about, you know, they're like, who else, you know, like, would you like to? And they're like, I think I'd just like to have like a hangout with Rihanna because she just seems like a cool chick. I'm like, yeah, like Rihanna, you listen to her music, she just seems like that cool fly chick, like that's just gonna be fly and stylish. So like your music to kind of tell like about like who you are, But I think before you even work on your music, get to know yourself. Who are you? Like really, like why are you doing this in the first place? Are you doing this just because you want attention? Because maybe then you should be in therapy. Like maybe you should work on your well-being. You know what I mean? Because if you think like being famous and is going to make you happy, oof. I mean, I've told stories here on this very interview about people that had fame, fortune, and committed took their own lives for for reasons that I have a lot of compassion for. So I don't say that with any judgment. But who are you? What do you do? Why are you doing this? Because if you're just doing this for the fanism of it all, that can come and that can go. And trust me, I've known many. And there's stories I tell in interviews, and there's stories that I will take to my grave of people who, when the going got tough, I mean, it got tough. And I'm talking about inside. So I think that your music should reflect who you are. I want to hear your music and feel like I know a bit about who you are, but you have to know yourself first. I think once you kind of know yourself, it's going to enhance the art you make, the writing the songs you tell, and that's what I think stands the test of time. I mean, I wouldn't be here. You wouldn't be interviewing me for almost 2 hours, nor would people watching if the music hasn't stood the test of the time. And I hope that people have listened to the music, and feel like once they've gotten a chance to know me, that it reflected who I am. You know, because you spend more time off stage than you do on stage. You know, you may love to do your music, but that's still a part of who you are. You know, it should reflect who you are, but you still have to live in your own body. I mean, it is a tragedy, and I have all the compassion in the world for it, but I mean, we have lost so many icons. I mean, this year alone, in 1 weekend, we lost Andre Harrell, we lost Betty Wright, we lost Little Richard. Little Richard was an elder, but Betty Wright and Andre were relatively young people. I mean, for the fact that we've lost Prince, Whitney Houston, and Michael Jackson, the three biggest, icons, it's a wake-up call, to us as a community, to even COVID, and the way that it's hit the African American Latino communities harder. It's a wake-up call. God wants us to be well, not just famous, well, from the inside. Accolades can't give you that. Yeah.
Wow. We have our own conversations, so I'm not gonna go into my personal space with Gordon, because I cherish my personal space with Gordon. They got to just figure it out, some of this stuff. But I do want to let you address, your fans. Hey, everybody who's been tuning in.
Yes.
I'm Kameron Corvet. This is Gordon Chambers, artist, singer, songwriter extraordinaire, vocal arranger and producer. And I look at all your credits and I'm like, Gordon's the type of person that's in the studio. Anything needs to be done, he's like, all right, cool. I'll go ahead and do it. I'll do the BGVs. I'll help you sort out this arrangement. And it speaks to your personality, to your altruistic nature. But I wanted to give you the floor to address your fans, your friends, your family, and just impart some words on them before we check out of here.
I just pray for everybody. This has been a rough year. It's been a rough year for me. You know, we've all been in it, feeling all of it. You know, we've been grieving either the George Floyds and the Breonna Taylors and the Rashad Brookses that we didn't know, but who felt like they could be kin and cousins to us, people that we would you know, could have been. Or we've all lost an auntie or a grandma or a great aunt, or, you know, I think it's been deep. You know, somebody, what's up, Gordon? My friend Gordon is online. It has been a deep year, really deep. But it has been the year for me that I think I've been the best son I've ever been in my life. I think that I have been a better family member than I've ever been. When life got simple, you know, and the party stopped, and you know, I got centered about what's truly important and who's truly important. But I'll say that too. You know, and I would just like to say to everybody, I pray for you, and you pray for me, and center yourself, you know, and just let yourself be a vessel. You know, this is a time for God to reveal to you how you can glorify Him, not yourself. This is a time to glorify something higher that gave you the talent. We need that uplifting art again. You know, our ancestors have persevered through worse than this. You know, for hundreds of years, you know, and the music we made, you know, the stories we told in the fields, you know, the music we created. I mean, even, you know, in the 1920s, I mean, the late 1800s, in the heart of Reconstruction and Jim Crow. Look at the John Coltrane's and the Dizzy Gillespie's that came out of segregation.
Yeah.
So I just lift my people up, and, you know, want to just say to everybody, we're kings. We're kings, we're queens, we're princes, we're princesses, we're dukes, we're duchesses, we are royalty. And we have royalty in our ancestry, in our veins. And to use this time to not just turn on the news, but read your history books. Google things about ancestors that persevered. You know what I mean? This is not just a time to get mad. This is the time to figure out how can you get strategic, and how can you be a light and a mentor and a vessel, and study your history.
Yeah.
You know, so that's what this time has been for me. And if we're gonna close out, I'd like to close out with a song actually that's on my spirit. If that's okay with everybody.
Sure.
I'm gonna go back to the upper room.
Upper room.
In the upper room. But you know, as some of you know, I've made 4 solo albums. Early in the interview, I did a medley of some of the hits I wrote for the Anita Bakers and the Brownstones, and I did that medley. But I'm gonna do a bit of a medley of some of the songs I've written that were, you know, on my solo projects as well, and then I'm gonna close out with one of the songs that's on my spirit right now. And I thought I'd never fall in
describe what I feel inside. Try to try, could it be a lie that I never fall in love again? Now to my surprise, I see love in your eyes, something I wanted all my life. You make me want to dream again, feel again, and laugh again, and breathe again. You make me want to dance again, clap my hands again, romance again. You make me want to love again. So those were the first singles. That was from the first single. That was Troy Taylor and Glenn Lewis. That was Never Fall in Love, and that was the Let Us Do It that I wrote to Love Again on the Love Stories album. And then to my surprise, when I released my third album, I had a big surprise. Cy Smith is on here, and we shot a video for this song. This was my first single, because on my third album, I wanted to sing songs that weren't just about love. I wanted to sing songs about self-love, self-esteem, because that's also a love story. If you're not loving yourself, then how can you love others? So this was the first single of the third album, Sincere, and it went like this. And Cy Smith was in the video. We shot the video in this house. Y'all remember Cy? Are you still there? We shot the video right in this living room. And that song went like this. It went, I can buy you gold diamonds, necklaces, and bracelets, and I could fly you to far away exotic places. I'll do whatever I have to do to put a smile right on your face. But when I'm not around, remember when you stare into the mirror, that baby, I can't love you if you don't love you. And I can't cry for you, can't heal your wound. I can wipe away your tears, hold you right here, buy you pretty things. But the truth is that I can't love you if you don't love you. So that was the first single from that album. But then there was a runaway song that got a lot of airplay. It was just a surprise, because on every album I try to do something that's spiritual. But I was really, really surprised that this song just started to get lots of airplay and became one of the songs that I would close my shows with. So this is what I want to leave people with this song. It's called Lead Me. Of all the songs I've recorded as a solo album, this is probably the one that's most personal. So I'll close like this, because I think this can administer to somebody. Maybe it'll minister to you, Kameron Corvet. Give it up for Kameron Corvet for inviting me to be here today, and inviting the artists to continue to support him and follow him. And as you learn about all these amazing artists that he's in profiling and songwriters, and thank you for your generous heart. I really appreciate it, and I mean that. And it goes like this. I may seem strong, but I'm falling apart. I may seem open, but I've been guarding my heart. And I may smile, but I get lonely inside. And the world sees the laughter, but deep inside I've been crying, and I need you to lead me. Take me back to the light. Can you please lead me, so that I can get it right? Lord, I'm asking that you lead me to a path I'm yet to find. Can you lead me right now back to the ocean, so I can purify my mind? I may seem rich, woo, but I've been rolling my dice. I may seem proud, but I don't take my own advice sometimes. And I may cry out, but I can be stubborn
afraid to bend the rules. I'm asking my Lord to lead me. You can play the guitar, Karen, if you feel it. Take me back to the light. Can you please lead me so that I can get it right? All I'm asking that you lead me to a path I'm yet to find. Can you lead me right now back to the ocean? I can purify my mind. Lead me right now. I don't have all the answers, so lead me right now. So that I can take some chances. Why don't you lead me? Take me back to the light. Can you please lead me? So that I can get it right. But I'm asking that you lead me to a path I'm yet to find. Can you lead me right now? Back to the ocean. Wanna purify my mind. Lead me now. Lead me now. I wrote this in Jamaica. Lead me now. Lead me now. My home place. Lead me now. Lead me now. Lead me now. Lead me now. Can you lead me right now? Woo! Can you lead me right now? Yeah. So now we're coming to a close. But the most recent album, please support all my solo albums. Once again, they are Introducing Gordon Chambers, Love Stories, with the featuring the duet with Let Us See, Sincere, That Lead Me's On. And the most recent album is called Surrender. And I want to close with this cover. I was in church with Steph Reed, who's on here. And we were in church, and the minister talked one day about surrendering. And I said, you know, that's my album title. So this goes out to everybody, wherever you are. Just surrender to something higher than yourself, and you'll know exactly what to do with your finances, with your romances, your kids, whatever. There's always a higher being. There's always a master that's higher than this that has a plan. So just surrender. All my sorrows, I surrender all to Him. I freely, and I will ever love and trust Him, and in His presence I will freely. My brother, this goes out to you, Brian Chambers in the house, painter. And I surrender all. I surrender all. And all to Him, my blessed Savior. Oh, I surrender.
Thank you, bro.
Thank you.
Thank you, bro. I appreciate it. We'll talk offline. Thank you again for spending some time with me, and educating me, giving me some backstory on so many different moments in musical history, and leaving us with an encouraging word, man. So I'll holler at you soon, man. Thanks again for joining me.
Thank you, brothers, and listen, if y'all want the vocal coaching, we do it just like this virally. Hit me up. My website is gordonchambers.com. My Twitter is Gordon Chambers. My Instagram is Gordon Chambers. My Cash App is Gordon Chambers. I'm in the Gordon Chambers business, here to love, here to pray, here to eat, pray and love, as the book says, and here to inspire. So thank you very much for the full 2 hours. We had 2 hours today. It has really enriched my soul. And thanks for all who've tuned in. I've enjoyed it so very much. And I'll look back and treasure this. God bless.